Just check. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we're on. Okay, perfect. We are on. Let me just. Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to start this now. So, my name is Carlos Tercios. Thank you for everyone for showing up and watching this third episode. We have Jeff Younger, and Jeff Younger has been involved in the fight, for his kids against his ex that wants to transition them into transgenders. And Jeff Younger has actually introduced the topic of transgenderism and how it's destroying the family, how it's just impacting society. And he was one of the first, to start talking about this, to actually raise awareness of this. And some Republicans have pushed some laws, but unfortunately, there's a lot more work to be done. So we're going to be talking about his case, his story, but we're also going to be talking about how this has impacted society, how this has impacted the Republican Party, and especially within the youth, between men and women, and also marriage. We're also going to talk about the institutions, the courts, family law as well, and how that's implicated. So, with all of that being said, let's introduce Jeff Younger. So, Jeff, just give us your spiel, your background, quick background story, and then we'll get started.
Well, hi, Carlos. It's good to see you again. At 2 years old, my ex-wife decided that she was going to transition my son to a girl. When I told her she couldn't do that, she filed for divorce, forced me out of my house. She's a pediatrician, so she had relationships with psychologists and was able to force me out of my house. At 3 years old, my son told me that his mother was teaching him that he's actually a girl. If you go onto YouTube and search for "Mommy Says I'm a Girl," you can see that video. That's the first iPhone video I actually ever took. The case began really inauspiciously for me. Right away, the psychologists that were appointed by the court as the custody evaluators began to lie about the case. There's a custody evaluator that I showed him that video, and I told him that, she's telling my son that he's a girl. He said that I had made a false accusation against my ex-wife. She wasn't trying to transition my son. And because I had, quote unquote, lied about that, he gave me less than standard possession. This is a psychologist named Blake Mitchell. He lied to the court, full well knowing this. And so I almost lost my kids over it. And of course, we all know she was actually transitioning my son. It started to really ramp up. He started to present publicly as a girl with his mom, but he always presented as a boy with me. And that's really important in my case. My son has always presented as a boy with me. When he would go to school, the school started to help my ex-wife transition my son. I would take him to school in boys' clothes. Principal Mickelson at Capel Pinkerton Elementary in the Capel Independent School District in Texas would put my son into a dress and make him use the girls' restroom, and they did that all in secret behind my back for over a year. I appealed in the school district this practice, and they concluded they did nothing wrong by doing that, by lying to me and transitioning my son to a girl. Eventually, this got very contentious between me and my ex-wife, as you can imagine, and we went to trial again in 2019. The judge there saw through my ex-wife, saw that she had been lying to the court, that she was lying to me, and that she was crazy, and gave me 50-50 custody and no child support. The liberal judges in Dallas County got together and they moved my case from the 255th District Court, which had protected my son, to the 301st District Court under Judge Mary Brown. I call her Bloody Mary Brown. Bloody Mary Brown systematically stripped me of all parental rights, even giving me supervised visitation because I would not affirm that my son was a girl. The supervisors for the visitation that she appointed were gay and transgender and would not let me change my son out of a dress. Eventually, because I refused to go to these supervised visitations, she used that as an excuse to let my son go to California, where he could be chemically castrated. And the reason that was important is in the intervening 6 years, I had finally gotten a law passed here in Texas outlawing the chemical castration of children. Took me 6 years and about $200,000 of my own money, but I finally got it done. I went up to the Texas Supreme Court and said, you can't let my son move to California because it would remove the protections of these laws from my son. The Supreme Court of Texas voted completely against me, except for one justice, Justice Devine, voted to protect my son. All the other justices voted to chemically castrate my son and send him to California. And one notable justice to call out is Justice Blacklock, a supposedly conservative justice on the court. I call him Black-hearted Blacklock. This Justice Blacklock wrote the opinion and said that my son was in no greater danger in California of being chemically castrated than he was in Texas, when California laws require gender-affirming care and Texas outlaws them. So Justice Blacklock is a liar and a complete idiot, and he should be off the bench. So my son goes to California. The case gets moved there. As soon as first time I go into court in California, they violate their own laws and seal the case so that the public cannot attend. I'm under a strict gag order not to release documents. They now are considered, because documents were released, because I believe in the First Amendment and I still talk about the case, and then a third party released documents without my permission. The court is now considering whether it will jail me and sanction me with fines. I could wind up in the LA County Jail. And that's where we are now.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned, the Texas Supreme Court. I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned Texas. We're a red state. We're a
Mhm.
majority Republican state,
That's true.
and yet this has happened. This Texas Supreme Court, which is all Republican,
Yes.
allowed this to happen.
Yes.
I mean, who were your greatest? I know you mentioned one of the Supreme Court justices, but who were the Republicans that were at least in the process of helping you out? And then who were the ones that, did their best to sabotage, to attack, and to refuse to help?
Well, the ones that helped me were, first of all, Ken Paxton, who from the very beginning stood by my son, even when it was very politically unpopular, because the governor and others really did not want this case to go through. And they didn't want to pass a law protecting children from these practices. Sid Miller, the Department of Agriculture commissioner, also was very adamant about protecting my son. Pretty much everybody else in the Texas government abandoned my son. So it took me 4 legislative sessions to get a bill through committee to even get a vote. And what they passed, and we can talk about this is a strategy that the liberal Republican establishment uses to convince conservatives they're doing conservative things when it has no effect. They took out 3 sentences from the bill I write. Otherwise, they passed the bill that I wrote, except for 3 sentences. Those 3 sentences would have classified these procedures as felony child sexual abuse. Okay? That would have prevented parents from taking their children out of state to abuse their kids by doing these procedures, and it would have protected my son. They took that out. Why did they do that? They did that because and why did they oppose the law to begin with? The reason is very simple. There's a large donor class. They're Northeastern liberals. Most of them are New York hedge fund billionaires, and they fund the Republican Party. They also fund the Democrat Party. There's a donor class, and it crosses both parties. The largest donor to the Republican Party is a guy named Paul Singer. Paul Singer founded the transgender movement in the United States. So the transgender movement in the United States was founded by a Republican.
Wow.
And this is the thing: the donors influence Republican leaders. And here's the quandary: if you're an elected Republican, you have a liberal donor class that gives you money, and you have an extremely right-wing electorate that votes you into office. So how do you solve this problem? How do you please both parties? And what they do is they pass bills with loopholes. So they passed the transgender bill that I wrote, except for those 3 sentences. And then they went to their donors and said, look, it has that loophole. These kids can still go to other states, and the parents can castrate their kids. And then they go to the Texas electorate and say, see how conservative we are? We outlawed these barbaric transgender practices. They did the same thing with abortion. Everybody thinks
Yep.
we outlawed abortion in Texas. No, we didn't.
Nope.
Same number of abortions are happening today as happened before. The difference is almost all abortions now are chemical abortions.
Yep.
All we did was outlaw the procedures done by doctors, but it's still legal for a mother to pop a pill and kill her baby. And that's what they do at Planned Parenthood now. They have these little rooms. They have a little tray like you see at a pharmacy where they slide the drugs in. They videotape it to prove that the pharmacist didn't touch the drugs. The mother takes the pill and kills her baby. And Planned Parenthood actually makes more money per procedure now because they don't have to maintain emergency rooms and surgical centers. They're still making tons of money off this. But they come to the electorate and they say, wow, we outlawed abortion. And then they go to their donor class, the people that give them money, and say, we really didn't outlaw abortion. The same numbers are happening. So they lie to us. They lie to us by putting loopholes in laws. If you ever wonder why they always have loopholes on illegal immigration, they'll pass a bill and say they stopped illegal immigration. There's always these loopholes that lets them come in because that's the game they play. And frankly, Republican voters have been falling for this for about 40 years. I've watched this happen for 40 years. I've been very active in Republican politics for 40 years. And frankly, I'm just tired of it. I'm at the point now where I have concluded that by and large, Republican voters are idiots. They're too dumb to understand the propaganda that's being played against them. And I can tell you for a fact that Democrat voters are objectively better voters for their side than Republican voters are for our side. In the Democrat liberal voters, if their elites don't deliver for them, they vote them the hell out of office. And our guys just don't do that.
You make a lot of good points, especially with, Senate Bill 14. I mean, here in Fort Worth, we got a left-wing communist church that has gay flags. They got tranny flags. They got the most disgusting flags you can have, and they call themselves a church, and they have a nonprofit that buses and transports minors out of state to get the transgender surgeries,
That's
which are
correct.
legal in Texas. And we protested that last October, but I'm like, wait a second. Shouldn't SB 14 be fixing this, like just, resolving this? And SB 14 is not,
No,
it's
no,
not.
it's very simple. Look, this is very simple. All they have to do is classify it as felony child sexual abuse, and that fixes it. But they won't do that. They want that loophole there because their donors will get very upset with them if they take out the loopholes. That's how it is. Yep.
Yeah, and you do mention how, the Democrat voting base, they are very much like a collective beehive. They're going to get engaged, they're going to get active, and they're going to vote out their masters or their, elected officials. They're much more aggressive.
Amen. If their elected officials don't deliver, they vote them out. Okay. And they don't tolerate loopholes. But our
No, they
guys
don't.
I'm just telling you that our guys have a huge problem with propaganda. Our guys, Republican voters, are very vulnerable to propaganda. And they just believe all kinds of crazy stuff. These people say you can show them the bill with the loopholes and they still can't quite get their head around it. You know why? Because they go, he's such a nice man and he goes to church. There's no way he would do this. Yeah, they're being paid to do this and they're lying to you. And our guys just can't understand it. I mean, it's made me very pessimistic about the future of Republican politics.
Yeah,
Our voters are inferior to Democrat voters.
I mean, Stephanie Click is one elected official that comes to mind when it comes to, she's this polished individual, she goes to church, she's this Republican, she was a nurse, she's a wife, how dare you criticize Stephanie? Look, all the stuff she passed. But, she was, correct me if I'm wrong, she was one that was handicapping the movement to actually make it child abuse. What's your take about Stephanie Click? And I know she was defeated, this May.
Oh no, the first time I met her at the Capitol, first of all, she didn't want to meet with me. It was one of the other representatives who introduced me to her in the hallway, and she just flat out told me, she said, "We're not going to have hearings on this because there'll be gay and transgender people who'll get their feelings hurt, and we're not going to do that." She was just willing to let kids be castrated because of the feelings of some people. This is a woman who has been part of the
Oh,
establishment in the Texas House that has blocked every conservative bill for 10 years. This is an ongoing problem. I was the first person to ever put cameras into the calendar committee room. The calendar committee operates illegally in the Texas House. It's supposed to have cameras. It's supposed to allow public comment, and it doesn't do any of these things. So I put cameras in there, and for the first time, because every good conservative bill goes to the calendar committee where Representative Dustin Burrows, kills it. And somehow, they can always pass, a commemoration of Dr. Pepper as Texas, state drink, but they can't pass a bill on immigration. They can't pass a bill
no.
to stop the castration of kids. They always can find time for these trivial bills. And they'll always come home and they'll get a sour look on their face and tell their constituents, darn it, we just didn't have time this session. We're going to try again next time. It's all lies. They don't want to pass these bills because their donors don't want it. Why do you think it took? We still don't have constitutional carry in Texas. We're close to it, but we don't quite have constitutional. Vermont has better carry laws than Texas. And I worked so hard on that. It took 25 years to get open carry in the state of Texas. Okay. And it's because the donors don't want it. And Texas, the governor, speaker, the insane gay man named Dade Phelan that runs our Texas House. He's a 5'5" poofter. If you ever meet him, this guy is completely enthralled to the donor class. So Texas is completely run by liberal Northeastern Yankee donors. Jeez. And don't you ever forget it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. That Dade Phelan is the gay speaker of the.
Yeah, he's the gay blade that chops all the conservative bills off. That's what he is.
And he castrates his members. I mean, that's
he does. He does. He has a 100% approval rating from all the LGBT organizations. Yeah. He's fully behind it, right? And who's his hitman? Who's his hitman in the House? Dustin Burrows. And all these conservatives up around Lubbock, Texas, and up in Hale County and Lamb County up there, all these dumbass conservatives just keep voting this guy back in. Yeah. He's a henchman for the liberal establishment. Why are you voting for Dustin Burrows? It's idiocy. That's what I mean. I really just think our voters are just inferior to Democrat voters, and eventually this state is just going to turn liberal. Yeah, our guys are just not going to they're not going to elect the people that will do the job.
Yeah, I mean, we have horrible state reps.
Man, we run seriously conservative people against liberals. I mean, for example, we ran Dwayne Stovall against Senator Cornyn. And it's at the federal level. Senator Cornyn is a straight up, I mean, even by Democrat standards, he's liberal.
No, he is.
And Dwayne Stovall is a solid conservative, a man with like a 150, IQ, very well read, independent businessman, engineer, and they passed on this guy. Like if the Republicans are that dumb, you can't win. You can't win with an electorate that stupid. And I'm very controversial because I call out the voters. We'd like to lionize the voters and say the voters are so wise. No, they're not. Our voters are stupid, and that's why we're losing.
Yeah, I mean, we have horrible elected officials, and that's because the voters vote them in. I mean, that's just the truth.
Over and over and over again. We also have some structural problems too, and you know this, with open primaries in Texas.
Yep.
And here's the basic game plan that the establishment runs on conservative candidates. They ran it on me when I ran for office. They'll split the conservative vote over some moral issue. So in my case, they use my divorce filings to create moral issues to split the vote. So now the liberal Republican is going to get half the vote and the conservative Republican is going to get half the vote, right? Because they split the vote. And then they bring in Democrat voters to cross over into the Republican primary to vote for the liberal Republican to make up the difference in lost votes. And they have beaten, that's exactly how Stephanie Click beat David Lowe the first time. And every single conservative Republican that runs for office must be able to articulate a strategy to defeat that, or they're
Yeah.
not going to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be education. It's going to be, actually learning the facts and realizing that the Republican Party of Texas, a lot of the elected officials, they're not really conservative. They're very liberal. They'd Phelan's one
Yeah.
example, Senator Cornyn's one example. And since we're talking about, the Texas elected officials, a lot of officials got voted out of office this past March and even in May.
Hmm.
Stephanie Flick being the exemplar of,
Yes, absolutely.
being voted out. Do you think there will be some change, next January? I mean, what's your opinion
I
about
think
next
I
session?
think that the tactics of Murphy NASCO, which is the political consultancy that they use for all these dirty tricks campaigns that the Republican establishment uses against conservatives. I think that the Texans for Lawsuit Reform, who are funneling millions of dollars to these liberal Republicans, the chambers of commerce, which fund all these liberal Republicans. I think the electorate has finally it's taken 50 years, but they're like, it's been 50 years. Why is there no closed
Yeah,
border? Why don't we have constitutional
yeah,
carry? Why are these people able to take their kids out of state to get their kids chemically castrated? Why isn't abortion illegal now that the states can do that? They're just asking themselves why this stuff isn't happening. And the obvious answer is because you've elected liberals, particularly into the Texas House. Why don't we have school choice? School choice is an
yeah,
interesting one. There's a huge propaganda campaign to split the Republican vote on school choice. But if you do a simple and obvious risk analysis on this, you're objectively better with school choice because you can keep the status quo just by not taking any voucher money. If you don't take any voucher money, you can do what you're doing now. You don't lose anything. So you're objectively better. And we could literally take $1 billion from our enemies under vouchers. $1 billion from leftist schools could be
yeah,
taken from them. The damage we could do is enormous. And just the fact that our voters just don't understand this, they don't understand how power is exercised. And so I think that what's happening is the voters they can't articulate it, but they know something's wrong with the candidates that they've elected, and they're looking for
yeah,
alternatives.
yeah. I mean, the schools right now, they're very left wing. I mean, if you go to any independent school district, even private schools and
Hmm.
universities, I mean, Texas Christian University has a full blown Antifa professor,
Oh,
and they
yes.
have several of those.
Hmm.
And when people say, "Oh no, vouchers are horrible, school choice is bad," I'm like, the vast majority of the kids that are coming out gay, they're coming out trans, they're coming out suicidal, they're coming out weak, you know, and then they're going to the colleges to become full blown Marxists and communists, not knowing how to work. And I mean, it's just a disgusting system. And here in Fort Worth, I don't see these schools being fixed anytime soon. I really don't see. And I tried it for several years. For several years, I tried it. We moved 1 inch and then we got blurry at 12 inches, like a mile. And it's just horrendous. I mean, the whole system's just horrendous. It's rigged. You can't fix it from within. You have to dismantle the whole system, in my opinion. And that's why they hate school choice, and I hope
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I
Look,
hope I
if
hope
you're
they pass it.
if your enemy hates something like they hate school choice, then you should do it.
Yeah.
It's really
let's
just that
let's
simple.
let's just do it. The party's over. We are done,
The
waiting.
Yeah, the political approach that we should take from now on is simply give exit ramps from every institution in America and let
Yeah.
conservatives leave all these institutions.
Yeah.
The idea that you could put your child into 12 years of liberal indoctrination and expect your child to not be affected by that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have to be a freaking moron to believe
Yeah.
that. But a lot of our conservative voters do actually believe that. You put a kid in, let's say he comes out conservative, maybe he was homeschooled and he's conservative, and you put him into 4 years lockdown at a university. where he lives with liberals. He has to conform to the liberal ideology in order to get grades. He has to masquerade as a liberal. And you think your kids can take that kind of propaganda and indoctrination? It's just absolutely stupid. And it's time for us to just call out these dumbass Republicans that keep doing this. Like, your kids are not going to stand up to that. So you need to exit these systems. And, the school choice is just one of them. There's lots of other systems we need exit ramps from, right?
Yeah.
One of the things about, the tax system in Texas, thank goodness we don't have income taxes, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of ways that we could incentivize being married and having children and so forth. Because, like, one of the big things here, and I think you have some statistics on this, single women are overwhelmingly left-wing.
Yeah.
And marriage is what causes them to vote Republican by a slim majority.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
You would think this would be, therefore, the number one issue of the Republican Party is promoting marriage. But let me tell you something. You can't get a Republican legislator to do anything about the family law system and the family courts, which are destroying children in this state and making marriage way too risky for young men. I actually think the marriage laws are so risky, I can't even recommend marriage for young men anymore. It is so dangerous. Look at me. All I want to do is raise my son as a boy, and I'm looking at jail time. And I've been looking at jail time for 10 years. I've been in court for 10 years. I've spent over $1 million. It has destroyed 2 businesses of mine. This is too much risk for people, and it's going to impact family formation. But Republicans will not address anything out of family court. They won't address anything about family formation. They're just not interested in those issues because their donors are not interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of valid points. I mean, the statistics right now are showing that 60% of young women lean liberal,
That's right.
while young men, it's almost half. It's actually growing. So young women are becoming much more liberal. Young men are becoming much more conservative. And there's also another study that shows that almost half of my generation of young men have not even dated a woman. They haven't even approached, because that they are so afraid of being canceled. They're so afraid of the court system, the way the whole system is just rigged against men, and also just being canceled, because unfortunately a lot of young women are becoming much more liberal. They're much more sensitive, more brainwashed. But you bring up a very valid point of, we need to incentivize marriage.
Yes.
We need to create a system that is fair, not just for women, but for men too.
Correct.
We got to protect we got to protect the fathers, because unfortunately the courts will side mostly with the mothers. And I just got to be honest.
In Texas, it's an astonishing number of times. In Texas, 94% of the time, the father will get 27% of the time with his child or less. That means 94% of the time, the father is getting 8 days a month or less. All of the psychology studies show that if you have less than 45% of the time, which is basically 50-50, if you have less than 50-50, you will have no mental or moral impact on the rearing of the child.
Jeez.
So fathers are completely being sidelined. And then we wonder why our children don't do as well, right? Yeah. And the other thing you see on the right, which I find disgusting, is you say, well, these young men aren't dating. They're not looking for marriage. They're not interested in having kids. And they say that's because they're weak and effeminate. No, it isn't. It's because they understand the risk. It's not theoretical for them. They have personally seen their fathers' lives totally destroyed in divorce. They have seen their fathers lose businesses. I talk to young men all the time whose fathers are living out of their cars.
Jeez.
They don't have anything left. Okay. And they still can't see their kids. So these young men are acting off what they've seen. So you can call them names all you want. You can tell them they're effeminate. You can tell them they're weak, all you want. They're going to believe their eyes more than they're going to believe your lying insults. And unfortunately, that's about all the churches have to offer these young men is insults. The churches, you would think, would be the first ones to defend fathers in their homes. And the churches have become so feminized themselves, I don't blame young men for
Yeah.
not going.
I mean, my wife and I, we were in Austin,
Mhm.
and we saw several churches with the training flag,
Oh
with
yeah,
the
oh yeah,
global homo flag.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was just disgusting. It's like they're inside the church now. They're inside the Catholic Church. Some of them,
Hmm.
a lot of Protestant
Hmm.
churches, and what do the pastors say? Oh well, we gotta be inclusive. We gotta accept them and be tolerable because it's a new time. We can't really discriminate. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. Hello, I mean it's just disgusting what's happening. And they enable this culture. They enable this culture of degeneracy. They enable this culture of, oh well, women can be by themselves. You can be a strong single mother. Well, last time I checked, it's actually led to more crime, more kids being broken
Hmm.
because you need the father. I mean, the father is the most important
No
figure
question.
in the house. I mean,
No, there's no
period.
question. I mean, look, father absence is the biggest social problem in America.
Yeah.
Absent children with absent fathers have double the level of criminality, double the level of
Yeah.
dropouts. Did you know that? I know the Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, has done studies on church attendance. So they track church attendance for children before they go to college and then after they go to college when they move out of the house. And they tried all different variables to see what correlates to children continuing to go to church when they leave the house. And there's literally only one. And this has been repeated by the Orthodox and by the Roman Catholics. And they're huge studies. We're talking like 10,000 people. What it shows is the only thing that correlates is whether the father took the family to church. If the mother took the family to church, it had no effect. It was completely a random effect. If the father took the children to church, they continued to go to church after they left the house. Fathers have a tremendous impact on children that
Yeah.
mothers don't. Mothers and fathers are different. Mothers have an impact on children. Fathers have an impact on children. The impact of fathers is very different, and it's just as vital. But you'll never find the
Yeah.
churches talking about this. You'll never find a Republican talking about this. If you listen to Mother's Day sermons in these churches, they're glowing, praise of motherhood. You go to a Father's Day service at church, and it's a fathers suck. They're not doing their job. Men are not stepping up. It's a bunch of insults. No wonder young men don't want to go to church. I don't blame them. I tell them don't go because these places are poisonous for men. And I mean, just look at the hymns. I've been to several Protestant churches. They sing hymns, and they seem like they're singing love songs to Jesus. Well, you know what? Men don't sing love songs to other men. We don't do that. No wonder men are uncomfortable singing these songs. Like, there's a really good book that a lot of people could read. It's called Why Men Hate Going to Church. It's by a very prominent Protestant pastor. I'm not a Protestant, but it's by a very prominent Protestant pastor. And he has a whole chapter on hymns and how the hymns are just ridiculous and turn off men. They sound like you're singing a love song to another man, Jesus. Men don't do that. And the whole environment has just become totally feminized. So, like, most of these problems are self-owned by conservatives, Christians, and Republicans. And that's why I just have no mercy on these people. It's their fault.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of churches that are very feminized. They're very, I mean, they're enabling the culture that we see now. I mean, degeneracy,
Yeah.
transgenderism, gayness,
Well,
all of that crap.
uh,
And
let me ask you a question here. You've been
sure,
down there with me to Austin talking about the transgender issue. I've known you for a long time, and you're a very sincere person. It's one of the reasons I started working with you before you got
yeah,
popular, before you were a big shot over there in Tarrant County. But I saw that you were a sincere person and a good person, and I'll work with a sincere, good person any time of the day. And that's why I always attended your events and everything. So here's a question for you.
sure.
We've gone down and we've spoke to the Texas Senate and the Texas House in committee, right? At any time, have we ever had Christians come and testify for us on our bills against castrating kids? Who showed up?
I can't really say because I didn't. I came to the
Not
last
one.
day, but I can't really tell.
Not one. I've been to every single one, every single day. Not one. Do you know how many the last hearings? Not this last session, but the previous session. Do you know how many Christian pastors showed up for the transgender view that we should castrate kids? Over 75 churches showed up.
75.
75.
Oh wow,
Only 10 got to speak. Now,
wow.
I talked to one, I'm not going to name the church. I'm still praying that they will redeem themselves or reform themselves. But I talked to the board of one of the largest Baptist churches in Texas. And they said they could not get involved in this political issue because they would lose their nonprofit status. The IRS will take their nonprofit status if they get involved in
Uh,
politics. So this is how naive I was at the time, right? This is like 8 years ago.
Golly.
This is how naive I was. I said, well, just pay your taxes and then you can preach the gospel. And they just looked at me
Wow.
like I was crazy. Like, they're like, we're not giving up that money. Like, this is what we have for churches. So, it's time to just be honest. We have crappy voters who've been educated in crappy churches, who went to crappy schools, left-wing schools, and crappy left-wing colleges, and they just don't have the ability to stand up to the propaganda. They just don't. We need to figure out how to get a better class of voter for Republican politics if we want to win.
Yeah, I mean, the church being absent and not being involved is one of the factors as to why we've devolved into this state
Definitely.
right now in Texas.
Definitely.
The church has been absent for decades. And I know I work with some churches, they are getting involved. They're going to school board meetings, they're going to commission courts meetings, but
Good.
every other church around, it's like they're afraid. It's like, oh no, we don't want to because it'll piss off the trannies. Oh no, we don't want to because it'll piss off my
Mm-hmm.
Democrat neighbor who's a
Yep.
Satanist. And it's like, yeah, no wonder the country's going to hell. No wonder the
You're
culture's
right.
becoming more gay. I mean, you need more churches like the ones that I'm working with and some nonprofits that are actually trying to get Christians involved and actually
Yeah.
realize, hey, you have a role in the political arena. You should not be sitting at the house and just praying and hoping that the country is just going to fix itself. No, like you have to go out in public square and do your public comment. You got to get involved. You as a Christian have a political authority in the country because the country was built by Christians, you know. But a lot of these churches have become cucked. I'm just gonna be honest, and I attended, one where they refuse to even talk about. Oh, there's an issue happening at the school board level about sex education, wanting to make your kids trans.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Nope, we don't want to get involved. Only like one or two churches got involved. Everyone else is like, nah, we don't want to. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem we're seeing. The churches being absent.
It's a long time
Yeah,
problem. And what a lot of people may not realize is that, as much as I criticize the churches are themselves victim of a government propaganda campaign. You can Google this. It's called the Doctrinal Warfare Program. Doctrinal Warfare Program. It's a program. It used to be run out of the CIA. It's now run out of the Department of State. It's never been a secret program. It's always been out in the open. It is an attempt by the government to change Christian church doctrines to accord with U.S. foreign policy objectives.
probably.
They subverted the Roman Catholic Church in the 1950s, and that's how you got the liberal seminaries in the 1970s in the Roman
Yeah,
Catholic Church, which led to all their problems. They've completely subverted the evangelical churches now. But that is a government propaganda campaign that's being waged against your churches.
yeah,
And then just let me give you an example of how much influence Christianity had on American culture up until the 1950s. I think, I'm not Roman Catholic, but I always praise, my Roman Catholic brothers and sisters because they have been very good on the abortion issue, probably top notch on the abortion issue.
yeah.
And they were, for many years, up until 1955, they are the ones who put in place the production code. They did it under radio and then they did it under television, both. You could not present sexual content in movies until 1955. Okay, that
Oh, wow.
production code was enforced by Roman Catholics.
Oh, wow.
They would destroy any movie studio that presented what they considered and I consider pornographic images in movies
Yeah.
or promoted sexual immorality in movies. They would literally destroy the businesses of these. They had that power to do that, and they did do it.
Wow.
Okay, it's hard to believe it, but one of the most popular shows in the early 1950s was Bishop Fulton Sheen. He had a 1 hour show, and all he talked about were social and political issues. And it was one of the most popular shows in America, viewed more than entertainment shows. So,
Wow.
like, that's the kind of influence that Christians used to have. They could stop movies from being made if they were immoral. Okay.
Yeah.
They could stop them from being distributed.
Yeah.
Okay. They could literally get businesses shut down in states. Okay. After 1954, the Christian control over the production code was broken by the Hollywood system. They spent a lot of money to break it. And then we just get this explosion of pornography into the 1960s,
Yeah.
70s, and 80s. And the quality of show, like, you can't even let your kids watch television. You can't let your
No, you
kids
can't. I
go to
mean,
the movies anymore. Like, even Disney movies, you can't let them go.
yeah.
It's because Christians lost control of the culture, and they had it
Yeah.
in the 20th century until the mid 1950s. Like,
Yeah.
people
No,
don't
I,
get how
yeah.
much control Christians had.
No, I agree. I mean, you can't let your kids watch Disney. You can't let your
No.
kids watch any show now because, unfortunately, they're gonna have gay, trans, Satanist,
Mm-hmm.
communist
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. And excuse me for my language, but it's reached the boiling point where, I used to be much more sympathetic to moderate Republicans. Like, oh, we could probably work with them, and we did our best. Hey, let's work as a team. We're the same party, aren't we? But we learned that they're not gonna fight DEI. They're not gonna fight the trans crap. They're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna fight the destruction of the culture. Instead, they're going to backstab us
Mm-hmm.
and side with the Democrat donors and the business class
That's
that
exactly
do
what they're
not
going to do.
care. They don't care, if Christianity is wiped out because for
Nope.
them their religion is globalism, secularism. I mean, it's Satanism. I mean, it's communism. I mean, what they're wanting, and they want to get rid of the church because it's the last front of rebellion. And there are still some churches that are, trying to mobilize people and get involved in politics. Mercy Culture's one great example. They are so involved, and I think that's the model that the whole country needs to have. They go to commissioner courts meetings, they go to city council meetings, they go everywhere. They protest, they petition. They've been able to successfully get rid of a lot of the gay books and their library programs for kids here in Fort Worth. They've done a lot of great things for liberty and justice. I'm just gonna shout out, but that is the model the country should follow. Every church should follow, and it's gonna take generations just to even maybe fix it. But I mean, it's just unfortunate. I mean, that you have a lot of churches that just don't care, they're cucked. A lot of Republicans that just don't care, they're cucked. And then, of course, the Democrats have all the leverage and power. And that's the thing, wield power. If Republicans are
They
in
won't do it.
positions of power, like if I'm elected into office, I don't care if the other side is yelling at me or showing up in front of my house. You know, I'm going to exercise my power. I'm going to ensure that I make it so inhospitable for these left wing pieces of shit. My apologies for my language, but I'm gonna
It's
make it so
accurate.
inhospitable to those idiots to the point where I want them to leave the state. I want them to leave Tarrant County, and I think that's what the mindset every Christian conservative should have is these people are your enemy. These people want you dead. They want you locked up. They don't care about you. They want to make your kids trans. They want to make your kids gay. They want to destroy what built this country, and that is Christianity and the family. and marriage. I mean, they've weaponized marriage. I mean, they are destroying the youth. They're feeding them with drugs, feeding them with porn, feeding them, with fast food and junk, and they're making them into a complacent, obedient, herd, essentially. And that's what they want. They want you to be numbed down. No, don't believe in God. We're God. The government is God. We, the ones in
Well,
charge, are
they're going to
God.
give you an alternative God to believe in. One that doesn't make you stand up for righteousness. One
Yeah.
that wants you to be tolerant of evil. They're going to give you a substitute God. I think we're headed to a reverse tyranny. That's what I've said all along. And they're going to give you a nice job, nice house. You're going to be very secure. If you cause trouble, they'll start to remove that security. And
Yeah, like a social protection.
people will automatically censor themselves and do other things to avoid losing that security. Um, and they need a kind of milk toast Christian religion to do that, and that's basically what they've constructed.
Yeah. Yeah, lukewarm Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you're seeing more and more churches with those gay flags, and allowing women to be up in the pulpit. I mean, and leading the church. I mean, that's also another sign of downfall right there. But
Well,
you're
there's a
seeing an
whole
awesome.
issue with feminism, like basic ideas of feminism in the Republican Party and in the churches. One of the big
Yeah,
structural problems we have in Texas is that a Democrat governor, um, this is years ago in the early '90s, she passed a law and reformed the party governance laws in Texas. So in Texas, the parties have to be governed 50% by women and 50% by men. So from each Senate district, you choose two, what we call in the Republican Party, SRECs,
yeah.
one male, one female. Um, and that has moved the Republican Party to the left in Texas. And it was intended to do that.
Oh, wow. And this was in the 1990s or a
Yes.
couple.
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't always the case that you had a male and a female from each Senate district. It was not always the case.
Yeah. So going back, to the court case in California, um, what do you expect? Like, how is the case going forward? What do you expect is going to happen with that case in
Well,
California
I've gone
in
up
the
to the
next couple
appeals
months?
court on writs of mandamus. We need to see how they're going to rule on some of these things because the judge has clearly just violated my due process rights. I have a federal case challenging the illegal gag order. A lot of your listeners may not know, but me being on your podcast is actually illegal in Texas. I have a court order from a Texas judge which says I'm not allowed to be on any podcasts. I'm not allowed to write.
Really?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not allowed to be in this podcast. So this is
No,
illegal.
no, completely illegal.
That
It
is
also bans me from talking about certain political topics, like transgenderism is one of the political topics I'm not allowed to
wow.
talk about. So I just don't follow illegal orders and mandates from the government. So I've gone up to federal court to get declaratory relief, to just declare that order unconstitutional and unenforceable by the state. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I fully expect that, there's probably a 50-50 probability I'll wind up in LA County Jail, which is it's the largest jail in America. It's the largest jail in the Western world. And it's
Oh
one of the
wow.
worst. It's considered the second worst jail in America. And I'll probably be put in there for refusing to be silent and speaking up.
Wow. So they are really trying to censor you.
Yeah,
And
because they're breaking the law even in California, and they can't have people knowing about it. It's just that
what
simple.
the
Yeah,
heck?
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just. I mean, California is such a sick state. I mean, it's such a communist state that you know. I mean, of course, Republicans probably can't even fix it at this point. They rig everything. I mean,
Well, if you talk to Republicans in California, they're idiots. Okay, they're worse than in Texas. They have absorbed completely the liberal ethos, completely. Like when I say chemical castration of children, they have a problem with that. They say that's
what
too
the
strong. You can't say that. The other thing too that you
Uh,
have, and California is a great place to see this. Like the lawyers that I've had to use for to protect my son, they
mm.
don't do pro bono work. But my wife has a bevy of lawyers from the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and
Oh man.
yeah, I mean, they're advising her. She gets free legal stuff from the left all the time.
Yeah.
But our guys are 350 to 750 an hour, and they won't give you anything to save your son. They won't. They don't
Okay.
care. I'm just telling you that by and large, when it comes to political action, when it comes to protecting their voting base, Democrats are vastly better than Republicans. Republicans, look, how is it possible that we had the J6 prosecutions, okay, and
Yeah.
not a single person in the Justice Department has been impeached by the House? How is it that Merrick
Good point.
Garland refuses to hand over documents to the House, and the House Republicans refuse to vote to impeach, to censor him, and to hold him in contempt and put him in jail for contempt, when they put Steve Bannon in jail for contempt
Yeah.
for the same thing? So what this shows you is that actually Republicans are perfectly willing to use power against Republicans. They're just never willing to use it against Democrats. And we have,
It's
until we
sad.
change these Republicans that are in office, nothing's ever going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna take, you know, the eventual awakening. It's gonna be slow, unfortunately. But I think there might be some hope in Texas, especially what we saw in March and May, and hopefully, next time Dade Phelan and the other idiots are removed.
Like, how does
Um,
Dade Phelan get reelected?
I know.
I mean, how does
I
that
mean,
little fag? How does that little fag get reelected? I don't get it.
you
Okay,
know,
like I
it's
mean,
propaganda, like you said.
everybody knows that this guy has been the engine of the liberal House and has
Yeah,
blocked every conservative bill that has ever gone through the House.
yeah,
Everybody knows that, but he's still got thousands and thousands of Republican
yeah,
votes.
tens of thousands, and it just shows how much of a big, canyon we have between Republicans and Democrats. Because, like you said, Democrats, they don't care. They're going to act as a collective. They're going to form as one
Mm-hmm.
fist, and they're going to put you in place. And like you said, they're going to hold accountable. If one Democrat says that a boy is a boy, a girl is a girl, and we gotta follow, basic biology. If one Democrat says that we gotta support basic biology, they're gone. They're gone. I mean,
That's
that's what
right.
happened with one of the state reps here in Texas. One
That's
of the
right.
Democrats supported SB 14.
Mm-hmm.
That one vote, and she was super liberal. I mean, it wasn't like a moderate. She was super liberal. And you would assume, oh, well, she has a strong liberal record. Of course, she might survive. No, she got
No,
annihilated. She was
they
thrown.
take
Yeah.
out their leaders if they don't produce for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a
And
mob.
we'll put people in like Tan Parker, who goes into the into the legislature, and has he's basically delivered memorial bills for UT and the Longhorn football team, and Dr. Pepper memorial things, commemorative bills. The guy's never composed any intelligent legislation in his life. And it's just like we have all of these losers that we continually elect
Yeah.
that have no fire for the fight.
Yeah.
But that's another problem. We're looking for what the Republican electorate in Texas is looking for are what I call choir boys. They want church going men, that wear cardigan sweaters and have highly polished shoes. But the guys that you need to elect to beat the left are the guys that have had their ass kicked, guys that have
Yeah.
had their back to the wall, taken a few punches. And those guys typically have something in their past because they
Yeah.
like to fight. And the Republican voters just don't have that ability. Somehow I don't know why, they think these effeminate milquetoast guys that stand up
Yeah.
and deliver these ridiculous, kind of insultingly stupid speeches to them. That's what they want. They don't want fighters. When they're given the
Yeah.
choice for fighters, they typically don't choose them. That one of the things about David Lowe's election that was so great was, David Lowe's a legit street fighter,
He
and his
is.
election signaled a big change, at least in that district. But I'll
Yeah,
tell
I
you, up
mean,
until him, I was like, our people are just too stupid to elect good people. I really just didn't think they could do it.
no, I mean, he won 56, almost 57% of the vote against Stephanie Click, who spent more than $1 million. I mean, she was like twice, she spent twice as more than
Mm-hmm.
David Lowe.
Mm-hmm.
And she was annihilated. She got 43%. And rightfully so, because
She's horrible.
she's horrible. She's boring. She killed a lot of good bills.
Yeah.
And then she came up with excuses as to why we got to appoint Democrats and committee positions, chair positions. And then she made up excuses about the transgender law, and so on, and killing those bills.
Yeah.
And she was just horrendous. And so it sent, I think that one was the biggest shockwave in North Texas, I would assume. Had Dade Phelan been removed, that one would have been the biggest one. But this one was
Yes.
huge.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
was.
she was the exemplar of what a polished, oh, she does the good talking, she got the good donors,
Her
she
and
did.
Dustin Burrows were the henchmen for Dade Phelan. Dustin Burrows is somebody that's got to go next, man. Dustin Burrows is awful.
Yeah, and the other one is Giovanni Capriglione, and he's in Tarrant County. Horrible, horrible guy. I mean, he lives in a super red district. It's like I think 70% red,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy is like one of those bootlickers for a Dade Phelan. He
Yes,
just
100%.
he gets down here and he's like, "Oh yes, Dade, yes, I love you, Dade Phelan. Oh my gosh, he was in the photo, hugging Dade Phelan and
I
like
know.
supporting him. I'm like, that asshole needs to be voted out of office next election cycle. No one likes him in this district. A lot of school board members, people in his district wrote a letter saying you gotta vote against Dade Phelan, and he's not gonna do that. But you got those retards in the state house that, oh, we're so Republican, we support lowering taxes and border security. Not really border security, they just
Where's the
pretend.
border
Because,
security?
yeah, we still
Oh,
get
I love
aliens
this.
coming
I love
inside.
this whole thing. Like, we're building the wall. Here's the thing, man. Like, just use your common sense here. We don't
Yeah.
need to build a wall. Okay. All we need. I actually went down, and when I was running for office, I went down to Brownsville and talked to the combat engineer battalion down there. They can lay landmines on the southern border. They can do 1 mile a day. We can landmine the entire southern border, and nobody's coming across that border. They're going to have to come through legal ports of entry. But people don't understand the scam that's actually going on at the border. So most of these people are actually coming in through legal ports of entry. And they know exactly how many spots are in the jail. It's usually around 1,500. And the first 1,500 are the people that can't pay. They can't pay the coyotes. So they send the first 1,500 through, and they all get put in the jail to be sent back to Mexico. After 1,500, everybody gets let in on their personal recognizance. Okay? And they give them a court date where they're supposed to go to court, which they never do. So, and then that 1,500 get to go next time, and they get to go and actually get in. See, that's how they pay their way in if they don't have the money. The problem is that we have completely cracked federal laws about asylum. That's why the governor should exercise his authority under the Constitution, declare an invasion, and declare that asylum seekers must remain in Mexico. It's just that simple. If he would do that, half the illegal immigration into this country would cease. But he won't do it because his liberal donors don't want him to do it. They could landmine the southern border and cut off all the drug trafficking, but they won't do it.
Yeah, they won't do it. And, at this point, I just pray, and there is, there's still an opportunity for change in Texas, like what we saw in March. But I just pray that, hopefully in Texas, I'm not saying for the rest of the country, because some parts are just completely lost, and I think they should just drift away. But especially in Texas, if this keeps on going, we could probably save it. We could probably preserve the state, at least the state. I don't know about the rest of the country because the rest of the country is just balkanized, and California is a CCP state at this
No
point.
question. No question
I
about it.
mean, or Oregon, New York. I mean, their cesspool of filth and homelessness and drugs and
Yeah.
and pornography. And
You know,
it's not.
if we were
It's,
smart, we would pass bills that were wholly repugnant to the left, and they would all
yeah,
leave. They would all
make,
leave. And
make them leave. Yeah.
yeah, when I was running for office, I proposed a couple things. One, any city that's a sanctuary state should have its city charter revoked by the state government because the state is what gives a city charter. Revoke the city charter and you break the cities up. If you're a sanctuary state, we're going to break your city up. You don't
Yeah.
get to be a sanctuary state anymore.
Yeah. You
We
know
will
what I
revoke the
say?
city charter and we'll start a new city with a new city council. We'll just
Yeah.
dissolve you. We'll just dissolve you.
Just send in the state guard or send it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the state can revoke a city charter anytime they want.
Yeah.
They should do it to Austin for sure. The second
No, they
thing that I
should.
proposed is that we copy what the federal government has and adopt a constitutional amendment that creates an electoral college in the state. And that would give the
Yeah.
rural areas much more power and it would reduce the power of the
Amen.
large urban
Yeah.
areas. And that's very doable because we have a working model at the federal level that we could just implement here.
Yeah. I think Georgia had that at one point, but that was something that was actually mentioned. And I think it's part of the planks for RPT because I voted for that here in the Senate
Mm-hmm.
District Convention
Mm-hmm.
because I think we should do that. I mean, Republicans, and I do love the fact that there are a lot of grassroots people in Texas. There's a
Mm-hmm.
huge, network that actually wants things like this. I mean, we need to exercise our power. If we're in charge, we need to act like we're in charge. We got to punish the left, make them suffer in the state, and then get them to get out. If we had the power, we would deport every Democrat and
No question about it.
just get them out of here. If you want to do your trans crap, go to Oregon, stay there. We don't want you. But here in Texas, abortion will be 100% illegal. All the trans stuff will be completely, illegal. You can't take them out of state. And the border will be completely, shut off.
Yeah,
Every illegal
absolutely.
alien has to stay in Mexico,
The,
stay there.
Absolutely. I'll tell you somebody who has a great model. It's Joanne Fleming, who runs Grassroots America. And she has absolutely one of the best organizations. And it's an umbrella organization that any other organization can join. She's legit and she wants to use power and she's not playing and she doesn't play with these elected officials.
Yeah.
She's serious about it. So if you have a conservative organization and you're looking to band together with others, look at Grassroots America under Joanne Fleming. She's great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we'll check it out. We're gonna start wrapping it up,
Okay.
but the last question is, how can people contact you, or help you out? What's your social media
Look,
handles?
the best place to get me right now is at Jeff Younger Show. I'm building some other websites out, but they're not ready yet. So just get me there. My DMs are open, and I respond to DMs. And I always publish updates there. You can also go to the Save James page if you're on Facebook. If you're not on X and you're on Facebook, search for Save James, and it's a page. It's run by volunteers. It's not run by me. I've been banned from Facebook. But it also has great updates. And the nice thing about the Save James page is it covers cases all over the world, not just America. It gives you updates on the science about transgender. It's like a great, like really good news site for transgender issues from people who want to save kids.
Okay, awesome. Well, do you want to say any final words before I close the stream?
Yeah, I mean, I would just close out with this. Look, get smarter about who you vote for. Vote for people that will actually fight for you, and that might be somebody that you don't particularly like. Honestly, fighters are often not very likable people, right? You want somebody that is going to be a tiger that's going to go in there and kick the ass of the left. Yeah. You don't want somebody that's likable and milquetoast and is going to try to get along with everybody. Just start thinking through what the propaganda is and how could it be that for the last 40 years, Texas can't get conservative legislation through our own legislature. And that has to be because you're voting for the wrong people. So start thinking
Yeah.
seriously about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I fully agree. Voters need to get more educated when it comes to who they're voting for. We saw that this March and May. Hopefully, it continues. Next 2 years and the next 4 years. We fully have control over the state.
Let's hope.
And Republicans start punishing the left. They start shutting down the border. Getting all of these illegal aliens out, exercising their power, and protecting the family and marriage. Incentivizing marriage, incentivizing the nuclear family.
Yeah,
Countries in Eastern Europe do that, like
they do.
Russia and other
They do.
places, because they understand that if the family unit is destroyed, if marriage is destroyed, or if it's systematically weaponized, then you're going to have a broken culture. And so the Republican Party needs to support the family, focus really hard on that, but know how to wield power. And I think we're getting to that point. David Lowe is one example, Shelley Luther, many other people that won are not afraid to use power because that's why we vote for you. I mean, we
That's
want you to,
right.
to govern conservatively, not to compromise with the godless,
That's right.
communists, in Austin. I
We
think
don't
people are
elect you for
waking up.
consensus. We elect you to enact our will.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll just continue the work and continue. And I know for sure saving Texas, but, just doing our best. So, Jeff Younger, thank you for your
Thanks.
time and of course for staying in the show and giving your talk.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right. Well, thank you.